Thank you, Jeff Miller, so much for coming in today with the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance, coming into the Podcast Village studios. How are you today, Jeff?
Charlie, I'm great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm delighted to see you again and have you back here, and was delighted to have the chance to meet you last week and get to know you. And I'm excited to talk to you about the Consulting Alliance and what you do and your story. Can you give me just a little setup and preamble to the Jeff Miller story?
Sure. So I grew up in family-owned business. The accent you hear is a southern one. It's south of Brooklyn. My dad was a retailer, had a shop in the shadows of the World Trade Center. Spent a long time, 30 years, working in the business. Intuitively smart, understood people, got it. But at the end of the day, no real return on the investment. He spent so much time working in the business and really wasn't able to put together something overall that was an entity that could be sold. Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's grown up in family-owned business, it's an interesting cycle. Good times, bad times.
Sure.
We feel it acutely. My mom was a caterer, so again, family-owned business, and got married very early. Mm-hmm. Well, very young, 20 years old.
Pretty young.
High school sweetheart. Yep. Met at the age of 14, and fulfilled the dream of going to live in Israel. I actually was a chicken farmer. Mm-hmm. Raised chickens for about 4.5 years, which was interesting because when I say that, I'm not talking about a couple of chickens back in Montgomery County yard somewhere.
Right.
I was
raising what you think. Yeah.
Exactly. I was raising about 250 birds a year. So that was mid-size, and it was an interesting introduction to how to operate a business, how to control inventory, how to deal with livestock, mm-hmm. how to operate labor, manage labor, and all of that. So It was fascinating.
And you were doing most of that yourself.
I was doing that basically completely by myself, except for I raised them for meat. Mm-hmm. So when it was time to ship them out, I'd get a bunch of people in to help with the sending them out.
Sure.
And if you know anything about it, or if you've ever worked with chickens, sending them out for slaughter is not an unhappy time. So, although we may want to cut that, I'm not sure, depending on the audience. So we were there for 5 years. Our older daughter was born there. Okay. She was a year old when we came back. And I think, as I shared with you, I graduated magna cum laude with a degree in American history, which in 1985, 86 meant I got a job in sales. And that's what I did. I was in sales for a company. We were up in the New York area. They're based out of Alexandria, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did through 2003. In 1992, the company relocated us down here, promoted me to VP, sales and marketing, and that was it. We were off and running, selling a lot of industrial packaging, shifted to more gift containers, mm-hmm. and by 2002, I was pretty burnt out. The last couple of years, a lot of travel, a lot of money, feeling very, very disconnected from my local community. Yeah. No connection to Rockville, to the business community, to the political community.
And this is important, so keep going, yeah.
And that sense of alienation, combined with spending a lot of hours working hard, not really making a difference, was the tipping point.
Okay, great.
May of 2002, my dad passed away unexpectedly, massive heart attack, and my mom left 7 months and 7 days afterwards because she wasn't doing New Year's without him, which is an interesting thing. Because when we go through life experiences, and this is something I share with clients, mm-hmm. You can't have different outcomes. If you want an outcome that's different, mm-hmm. you can't change the event, only your response to it. Mm-hmm. And as anybody who's gone through a grieving process, you know at a certain point, the grief turns to a sense of, wait a minute, you know what? Life is really short. Why am I spending so much time doing something professionally so unhappy? Yeah. I'm 45 years old at the time.
Right.
And that allowed me to make a change. Mm-hmm. So July 4th, 2003, went in to have just a regular meeting with my boss, and mm-hmm. at that meeting decided that was it. And I told Betsy beforehand, this might be it. And she said, that's okay, we always land on our feet. So I quit my job on July 4th. It was my Independence Day. Blasted Bruce Springsteen on the way home. Called my brother. Said, hey, listen to the background. He said, you didn't do that, did you? I said, yeah, I did. Got involved in business coaching in September of that year. Okay. Purchased a company that was called Action International at the time, now Action Coach. Okay. It was a wonderful franchise. It gave me a lot of years of developing a skill set for coaching and training and working with clients that very few other coaches and consultants actually have to that depth. A lot of good stuff. And started JM Consulting, Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance, back last year.
Okay. So tell me a little more about JM Consulting Alliance then. What is it,
Yeah, so
specialties
we work with there's primarily three areas of expertise that we work with. We work with the small to mid-sized business community,
Right.
Working on training, on development, on team building, sales and marketing, the type of things that small business owners need.
Right.
We do executive coaching, and that's really about leadership training and the concept of what got you here may not get you to that next step. So there's a real need for that, and that's interesting as well.
Sure.
And then we also work with nonprofits and associations, strategic planning, board governance, grant writing, fundraising, board recruitment, board development, just a whole range of services that we're able to bring to the nonprofit world. Also working with executive teams and making sure the world of nonprofits are interesting because they're much more effective when they run themselves as a for-profit.
I'm familiar with what you're saying. Yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah.
So many of the principles.
So many aren't run that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
And even ones with large operating budgets
are run so strangely, if you will.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting about all of what I do, if there's one common thread, to paraphrase Yogi Berra, 50% of business or life is playing the game, and the other 75% is showing up. So ultimately the question is, are you showing up to survive or are you showing up to win? Because I don't know about you, Charlie, but I show up to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I'd say all of my clients, I think as a rule, all people struggle with. It's how are you playing the game and how are you showing up to play the game. And that's really a fascinating part of what I do. It's what it's the part that I find most enjoyable. It's dealing with those little voices that get in the way. Because most of us know how to succeed, and most of us have the drive to succeed, and most of us know what we need to do to succeed. So if we're not doing that, what's getting in the way?
Wow. Yeah. Boy, I could start listing my own problems here.
Charlie, that could be another blog.
No, I can't stand it. So now, well, let's stay with nonprofits for a while. So you're handling a dozen or more clients, coaches, and how much time do you have that you can devote to the nonprofit segment of what you're doing?
So as a rule, I'm working with 24, 25, 26 clients at a time. The nature of my relationships with clients are interesting. My average client retention tends to be about 30 months.
Which is extraordinary, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty high. It's something, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
Because it ultimately speaks to the success that my clients are having.
Exactly. Oh no, it's a very clear indicator rather. And I'm imagining that a typical client is about a year, 10 months to a year or something. I'm just guessing here, but I mean not for your alliance, but for sort of the standard.
Yeah.
In the field.
Yeah, it's actually even a little bit less.
Is it? Yeah. Well, time is money, and if they're not finding value in it or not ongoing value in it, it'd be time for a small business to move on. So it does say a lot about you. Now I know you've done some very interesting things with a nonprofit with the prison system as well. Can you touch on that for me a little bit?
Sure. So as I stated earlier about when I was feeling so disconnected from the community. So when I decided to open up the business back in 2003, we jumped in. Joined the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. Within a year and a half was on the board, and within 2 or so years was the chairman of the board. Got very involved in Manna Food, which is Montgomery County's food bank.
Right.
And hunger in this county is probably the best kept secret, certainly in Maryland, if not the United States. Yeah, it's astounding how many kids and families are going to bed hungry at night.
I didn't know we were one of the leaders in that field. I'm sorry. To hear that.
Unfortunately. So I got involved in that on that board as well. Was the chairman of that board for about a year and a half, 2 years. When I started the new entity, on back of the business card, it says bigger than just business. And when I said it, I wasn't quite sure what it meant other than the fact that it resonated.
So what does it mean?
So so what it means is that we're here for reasons other than just ourselves. And as business owners, as members of a community, we've got a responsibility to take care of those that need to be taken care of to whatever extent that means to you. I'm not here to preach. I had the good fortune of going through Leadership Montgomery last year, which is an incredible leadership training program.
And you learn a lot about the county, too, that you maybe didn't know. I guess.
Yeah, a lot of you learn about the story and the narrative and the gaps.
Right.
And what interested me were the gaps. And one of the places where we saw that was we did a tour of the correctional facility up in Boyd's.
Right. I've never even seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty well hidden. It's you pass it on 270, except it's sort of down below, so it's not seen. But when you walk in there, boy, you see it.
I bet.
And as I was walking out, we walked past this what was basically a coaching office, and started doing some more digging around. And they have a program for guys and gals that are about to get out to teach them hard skills. And while I never ever would have thought that would be something I'd be interested in,
Sure.
I found myself volunteering.
Wow.
And went up there and then realized actually this is the forgotten population. And I realized that the skill set that I bring to my clients was transferable here. How do you identify?
Yeah, I never would have thought that, but I'm fascinated. Keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we developed a series of 3 workshops dealing with identifying what has to change, then introducing the kind of accountability factors that will make sure that they'll change,
Okay.
having very hard and honest conversations about what's working, but more importantly, what's not working, teaching them how to set goals, and then ultimately, when they leave, to leave with a 60-day plan of what has to be done over the next 60 days, because that's the first milestone is 60 days to make sure they don't end up back.
Back in jail. Wow.
And I've been doing that since probably March of last year, and it's been incredibly humbling.
I'm sure. Wow. I can't imagine the stories, and I'm sure we don't have time to tell them all, but I'd love to hear them that you've had with that experience. It's funny how wanting to be involved in the community, do more, to be a part of the community leads to pathways that you didn't know, might not have ever imagined. And I'm sure that that it would have never occurred to me that you end up, seeing that facility, becoming aware of the facility, intimately aware of what's going on, and then working in it. It's a huge step, and I applaud you.
Well,
it's just extraordinary. Yeah.
Thank you. And these things are interesting how they lead to other things. I'm on the board of the Corporate Volunteer Council of Montgomery County.
Okay.
And what we do is we act as a facilitator to bring the business community and the nonprofit world together to help develop corporate responsibility programs.
Really?
Yeah, it's this is a 26th year.
Wow.
It's again another great organization that's about building community. When people ask me what the mission of the CVC is, the Corporate Volunteer Council, I say it's to Montgomery County, the best county in the United States to live in. And we do that by taking care of those that need to be taken care of. And when people and when businesses do the right thing, and when I say the right thing, I'm not prescribing that. It has to be in tune with who you are, with what your culture, what your values are.
Sure.
And when you act within your values, the return is always there. That's not the primary reason you do it, but the return is always there. If I can just, on tangent for a minute,
Yeah, please.
a great book by Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Yes.
And he's studying all these great companies that have nothing to do with each other. Back in the 80s, it was people like Merck and
Incredible book. Yeah.
Incredible, right? Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark. And he's interviewing the CEO of Merck, who was still a family member at that point. And at the time, they had just developed a vaccine to deal with river blindness in the Amazon.
Okay.
And they're developing this all on their own dime.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't trust the infrastructure. So they developed the infrastructure to get it to them. And the rest of the industry is looking at them saying, what are you doing? You're spending all this money. And
Right.
and what Merck's response was, we're in the business of curing people. If we do that, the money will come.
Yeah. It's pretty extraordinary.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty powerful lesson. And that whether you're a billion-dollar company or you're a $250,000 company
Yeah.
or you're an employee for a company,
Yeah.
we all have whatever's within our means to help somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. I've got to go back and go over that part so that I can, remind myself, because that's such a great story and such a great book, as a matter of fact, as well. Yeah. Well, okay, so we got to work back from nonprofits, I guess, and talk about small business development and leadership training. And do you find yourself? Let's talk about Launch for a minute. You've come and visited the Launch workplaces out here in Gaithersburg a little bit now. Do you move around to different facilities, or do you meet clients at their place of business, or do you do any live training? I'm just sort of throwing a few out there. Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes to all of the above.
Yeah, okay.
For the most part, I like to go into my clients
Right. Sure.
because I choose not to work with my clients in a vacuum with the rest of their team.
Right.
And while I've done and do phone coaching or coaching with Skype, it's effective. But when I get in there and get the sense and the pulse and
You got a real
feel
taste
what's
for it,
going
yeah.
on and
Yeah.
get to learn people,
Yeah.
it makes my job easier and more
Sure.
effective. So
Sure.
I do workshops, I do trainings, I get around to facilities like this, and this
Yeah.
is breathtaking. This
Pretty
is beautiful.
extraordinary, isn't it?
It's an
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah.
just the kitchen alone.
Yeah.
Goodness. And I saw that training room in the back. It's fantastic.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a really exciting facility. I hope that some point, Jeff and I will be doing, classes on podcasting and other things, because I would love to just use some more of this facility because it's so much fun. But I'm interested in reaching out as well. Well, Jeff, I'm going to pause the player for a minute, because then I'm going to ask you a question. We'll go a little further afield in some of the questions where charity meets business. But I want to thank you, Jeff, for coming into the Podcast Village studios today and giving us a first taste of the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance, with more to follow.
Charlie, thank you.
Nobody heard them calling, nobody came along. They were too busy watching all those raindrops fall. Then the storm came a-rolling on the deep blue sea. 73 men sailed off to history. Ride, Captain, ride on your mystery ship, on your way to a land where others might have missed. Ride, Captain, ride on your mystery ship. Be amazed at the friends that you made on your trip. 73 men sailed her from the San Francisco Bay. Roll up with the ship, and here's what they had to say. Calling everyone to ride along to another shore. We can sail all out the way and be free once more. Nobody heard them calling, nobody came at all. They were too busy watching all those raindrops fall. And the storm came a-rolling